had seen that from the time of the Renaissance age, there was a change in the ideological base of the society. Now, we also saw that this change primarily came because people were becoming more aware of what was around them, what was happening around them, and people started questioning, the society structures as well as their institutions. Now, at this point of time, we have already discussed the fact that these changes that were happening in the medieval times in the Roman Catholic Church was due to the Reformation movement. But in order to understand how exactly this Reformation movement impacted the church, the Roman Catholic Church, we have to realize the causes behind this Reformation movement. So, first of all, we need to know where the word Reformation comes from. So, the word Reformation comes from the word of reform. So, reform would mean then to change any existing form of something. So, anything that exists in a current form, to change that, to reform that. So, this period of Reformation was ideally focused on reforming certain existing structures of the medieval society. The first, of course, structure of the medieval society that had become very dominant, very orthodox, was the church, because the church was the primary institution in the society. So, we know that this change started to happen from that important institution itself. So, the Catholic Church had become very dominating and orthodox in the medieval period. Ideally, this change came because of the very first fact that people started to question, in fact, the dictates of the church, right? How the structure of the church worked, why it took those steps, or why exactly was it dominating. These questions were being asked by the people. Therefore, we see that there is a rise of the spirit of inquiry. Now, this idea of inquiry was also situated in the age of Renaissance. So we see the base of Reformation being formed by the Renaissance age and, of course, humanism, which was the base for the Renaissance age, that ultimately gave rise to the Reformation movement or the Reformation idea. Now, these factors of humanism, rationality, or in fact the spirit of inquiry came from the time when people started reviving the old, as we have discussed during the chapter of Renaissance, right? That they were reviving the ancient spirit of Greece and Rome, and various factors like that of the Crusades, the scientific and geographical discoveries, the increased contact with the eastern portion of the world because of the open trade routes, and the growth of individuality influenced the people to question and to take forward these questions and reform the structures. And what were these structures? These were the economic as well as the societal structures, various institutions that were there. Now, one of the institutions of the society that organized the society was the church. It was the primary institution. So, people also started to question the institution of the church. So how do you think will the people question the institution or the structure of the church if they do not know about the institution? And how will they get to know about this institution? It could only be possible through the invention of the printing press. We have seen that Gutenberg's printing press revolutionized the society. people now got to read the Bible, and they got to know about the structure of the church and what exactly was written in the Bible. So the printing press helped people to read and to question their surroundings. We see that the invention of printing press led to the habit of widespread reading, and when people started to read more, they realized that the texts have to be translated so that everybody could read. Not everybody, knew the official language. They spoke in their vernaculars. So the texts now started to, get translated so that people could read in their local languages. What were they exactly questioning? The people were trying to question the corruption of the church, the corruption that was taking place in the Catholic Church. So people became more aware of their daily life activities, and they started to realize that the character of the church, the institution of the church, had become very, very dominant and orthodox, as well as very corrupt in nature. So we see that the corruption of the church is visible through the new modes of exploiting the people. So they started to economically exploit the common people by overburdening them through various taxes. They also introduced something called the sale of indulgence. Now, what was the sale of indulgence? A sale of indulgence was basically a particular piece of documentation that was given by the Pope in exchange of an amount of money that the common man would give to the church and the Pope. Now, this was said that if a man had this indulgence that was given by the Pope, then his sins would be remitted by the Pope, or it would be reduced. Right? So this entire fear of, sins and an afterlife was something that made the people, the common people, buy indulgences. But in reality, these indulgences, or the money that was being collected in the name of indulgences, was being put to, primarily let the priests and the monks live lavish lives. So we can understand that the church attempted to gain money from people in the form of taxes and indulgences to live lavishly. We see at this point that the church was also appointing various priests and monks who weren't really qualified for that position. So priests and bishops who were being appointed were unqualified, and they ignored their duties and lived lavish lives. So here we see that the institution of the church and the pastor, who is the priest, is becoming rich and richer by the collection of teeth. Teeth was one of the taxes being collected by the church. And here we can see the large estates of the bishops, the lavish living that the bishops had, the manorial buildings. So we see that the institution of the church and the people who maintained the church were now corrupt to their core. Therefore, this produced a strain on people and the way economy was being handled. So there was an economic burden on the people. We see that the introduction of added taxes like that of teeth and Peter pence became an overburden for the people. People could not take the burden of the added taxes anymore. Here in this picture you can see how these people are going to pay their ration and their taxes. So taxes like that of teeth, Peter's pence were being asked of people. Now what was teeth? Teeth was 1/10 of the annual produce, 1/10 of the agricultural produce or whatever earnings people had, that was being taken as a tax to support the Catholic Church and the clergy. Basically maintain their lifestyle, they were being asked to give money. They were taxing the common people. And Peter's pence was basically a payment directly made to the church for the Holy See of the Catholic Church. So a Holy See is basically to go visit the Lord, to see the Lord. They were paying a tax for that sort of pilgrimage. Okay. Now, we have seen the fact that these common people were constantly getting exploited by the church and the aristocracy. So it was not just the church, the priests and the bishop, but also the clergy who was, taxing them and taking money out of the common people. So the church instead supported the nobles. They were taxing common people and exempting the nobles from paying taxes so that the nobles would support these priests and bishops to remain in power. Now, as we have been discussing the fact that the church had become really dominant and really orthodox in the sense that it constantly interfered in the lives of the people and the way they led their lives. So, in the private lives of the people, the church was trying to have a say, and that included, common ceremonies like that of marriage, birth, baptism. All of these ceremonies were a burden on the people. So we see here that the archbishop is conducting ceremonies. At that point of time, the church had not only overburdened people with, strain with regards to taxes, but also with regards to extra ceremonies that they had to do. So we see that the common people are now irritated with the fact that the church is extracting so much from them. So what do the people do? The people started to revolt. They started to raise their voice against the papal authority. So the Pope was now being questioned. The practices that the church was holding, that was being questioned and opposed. So we see here the protesters are being crushed by the state, by the Pope himself. Now, it was not only the common people who were protesting against the church at this point of time. We see people from within the church who are coming up and voicing their opinions, and John Wycliffe was one of them. John Wycliffe, who is known as the morning star of Reformation, was one of the priests in the Catholic Church. And he was the one who first translated the Bible. He wrote the translation of the Bible, and he explained the fact that the church was being a primary authority to the people, whereas it was only the Bible that people should live by, right? So can you tell me who is called the morning star of Reformation? Is it John Wycliffe, Martin Luther, Henry VIII, or Max Weber? That is right, it is John Wycliffe. So, because translating the Bible was, was viewed as a sin by the Catholic Church, it was viewed as a protest by the Catholic Church. So what did the church do? The church stated Wycliffe to be a heretic, and in doing so, it banned all of his religious books that he had written. It also ordered Wycliffe's remains to be exhumated. So we see in the first picture the burning of Wycliffe's books, and this is Wycliffe reading the translation of his Bible that he translated himself. So we can understand that the institution of the church had become this overarching institution that was not only exploiting the common people, but it also was removing people from its own order if they voiced their own opinions against the orthodox institution of the church. For example, a priest like Wycliffe, who stated the problems that the Catholic church had. Now he was banned and removed from the order itself. So we can understand that the resentment now not only rose from the common masses but also from within the order as well. Now this resentment was not limited to the common masses or the order. This resentment had taken a political turn when the kings and rulers of various places started to realize that the church had been too overbearing an institution over the administrative say of the kings and the administrators. So we see that the kings and rulers of various places found it extremely difficult to rule autonomously. So because of the dictates and restrictions of the Catholic Church that the church established on their rule. So what did they want to do? They wanted to break away from the Catholic Church and establish their autonomous rule. So we see that Protestantism at this point of time brought a change. So Protestantism that was, for example, had already grown in Germany, in Wittenberg, in France, was right now, spreading. It was becoming widespread. So Protestantism provided these rulers and these kings with an alternative sort of form of Christianity. And now they wanted to break away and take the support from Protestantism to move as an alternative to Catholicism. Thus we see that the resentment of the rulers becomes one of the main causes that saw the spread of the Reformation movement. Now, the interference of the Catholic Church was, of course, one of the main reasons behind this resentment. The kings wanted to autonomously rule. They wanted an independent rule, free from the church, free from the dictates of the Catholic Church. And they started opposing the Catholic Church because they wanted to gain independence and rule autonomously. So we see the monarchs of England, France, Spain supporting the Reformation movement. So they were taking to the Reformation movement, they were taking to Protestantism as an alternative to Catholicism. Now this, conflict that between the church and the rulers arose from the fact that the rulers could not tax the church's property. The rulers had the right to tax any property that was under them, right? But the church stated that if you tax the church's property, then you will be excommunicated from the religion. But the papal authority, the papacy, was defeated in the end. So in this debacle of the, who should pay the tax and who shouldn't pay the tax, the papal authority was defeated and the church had to pay the taxes to the kings. From this, fact of the resentment of the rulers, we come to a very important juncture, which was the, factor of a male heir to the throne. Now this cause changed the, we can say the history of England as well. Why? Because of the story of Henry VIII. Now, it was the rule of the church that neither could you remarry nor could you divorce. Both of these were seen as illegal activities. Now, the church also had a rule that stated that the male heir is the only legal heir to the throne. Now, Henry VIII, who was the ruler of England at that point of time, couldn't bear a male child and he wanted to remarry, right? And divorce the then wife, Catherine of Aragon. But the church opposed it and Henry VIII was not ready to take that opposition. So we see that the church established the fact that the male heir was only the lawful heir to the throne and that remarriage and divorce was an illegal act in the eyes of the church. So Henry VIII was stuck in a conflict with the Catholic Church. Thus, he was stuck in a conflict with the Catholic Church. And what did he do? He decided to break away from the Catholic Church and established an independent church which was called the Anglican Church, in which he declared himself to be the supreme head. So the king or the ruler would be the supreme head of the Anglican Church. Now quickly, if we go back and try to recapitulate the causes of Reformation, the first one will be spirit of inquiry. Next, invention of printing press, which helped people to read more and question. Corruption in the church that was being questioned by the people. The overburdened activities, the economic activities that the church was doing, the taxes that were imposed on the people, the economic burden caused by taxes like that of teats and Peter's pence, Wycliffe's first resentment when he voiced his opinions against the Catholic Church, and the resentment of the rulers that ultimately gave it a political turn. Thus we see that all these factors clubbed together provided an impetus, a push to this idea of Reformation that ultimately led to the various changes in that part of history in the medieval society as well as the early modern period that was to come. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at deltastep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology, get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly, learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.